Sandra here, the Vintage Arcade Gal, and we have a couple projects in the works, but we're not going to worry about that on this webisode, or whatever you want to call it. Right now, we're just going to show off the Atari Cabaret Liberator project that's completely finished. In fact, it's actually been done for about 2 weeks. But I want to show it to you, kind of give you a tour of it. We'll take a quick recap here of how we got to this point and kind of how we put this thing together. So here's a real quick montage, because we went over some of this last time in the other video on our Cabaret Liberator. And there you see the board sets. The first board set was not working, but the second one was, that I received from a guy named Buddy who sold it to me. Real nice guy. And we just build these things in pieces. We use not just the blueprints that are available for the CNC machines in this cabinet, but our cabinet, our battle zone as well. And this was over the span of probably like 2.5, I want to say almost 3 months, making this thing trial and error with a control panel, restoring things like this little power brick there, a lot of test fittings to make sure that everything was going to fit flushly together, and just just one little piece at a time here, building this thing and taking your time with the laminate. You can kind of see there we made the control panel again, we made the front piece again, there's more laminate work there, and you can check out some of our other videos, like for the Marquee and the Simpsons, how to do this stuff a little more hardcore. Putting it together finally there, and it looks great. And I think it's important too, just to do a little bit every single day to keep just the momentum of the project and not to make mistakes. If you're tired, stop, work for another day. It's not a race when you make these things. Enjoy it. It's supposed to be a hobby, relaxing, and speaker grill. We actually signed the bottom of it, and there you go. There is our finished game. So let's take a little bit of a tour, shall we? So here it is in all of its glory. A lot of people make custom cabinets with the kind of abundance of CNC machines now available, and a lot of times the reproduction is very true. But what I find when people decide to make like custom cabinets of games that maybe didn't exist in these kind of formats, like cabarets or whatnot, they tend to veer pretty far away from probably what the factory would have done. So my goal with this cabinet was to make it as factory correct as possible with what I had to work with. And I think we did pretty well. And we decided to use this Battle Zone / Asteroid Deluxe style cabaret cabinet because, one, Liberator is a horizontal game compared to vertical, like on some of the other cabaret cabinets that Atari used for like Dig Dug and Centipede. And even though there was a plan to make Liberator as a cabaret as well as Gravatar in '82 with a slightly different cabinet style, it's very similar to the Centipede cabinet, but it encompassed a 19-inch monitor horizontally. Those blueprints aren't available, so we figured this was our best bet. And we liked the Battlezone versus the Asteroids Deluxe because the speaker placement on the Battlezone version is on the bottom, and there's kind of a fake subwoofer box in the bottom. We'll show you when we crack it open. You probably saw it in the montage of us building it. So let me just show you give you a little tour of this real quick. So the control panel, we've got our smaller trackball, which is illuminated. There's a fire button and a shield button, and then the cone buttons that are common for Atari games, and they light up when it's first player, second player, etc., etc. Now, the overlay is the same design as on the original upright, but it's been slightly modified and resized, and that took some little head scratching because we wanted to make sure we got this cool kind of Atari logo on the front here, and it sticks out a little bit, which is actually what the cabaret cabinets do. But these would have been made out of metal, which I don't have those skills, and I went to go to a shop to get them fabricated. It was just way too expensive for a one-off project. So we made it out of wood. I'm just going to show you real quick here kind of what we did. Just unlatches. And I kind of modeled this after the wood control panels from Williams games, which are made of wood. And as you see, sorry, there's going to be a lot of glare. Just wood. And this is what, 3/4 of an inch plywood? No?
It's 1 by 8, 1 by 6.
It's a 1 by 6?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's pretty strong. We tried to make this out of particle board the first 2 times, and it just smashed to pieces. It just wasn't strong enough, so we need something stronger. So it's pretty simplistic, actually, in its build, but the measurement was a bit of a challenge. And the light underneath of it, the fluorescent light, will actually light the trackball up. I said I need an extra bulb, although if it had its own bulb, it might be a little brighter, but it's pretty bright. So, and then we just have our plexi, and then the bezel, and of course it's all full of cat hair right now, which is great. It just goes back down, the latches up again. And then our marquee came out pretty well. There's a little bit of a Photoshop oopsie there that if it really starts bugging me, I'll fix it. I also got a little aggro with the heat gun here, and there's a little bit of a milty spot on the control panel, but I have another one of these. So if it bothers me too much, I'll just redo it. So our front laminate is a little glossier than it should be, unfortunately, but it actually looks pretty good, even though it's not perfect. But that's just me. We have our coin door, which is pretty standard of the era coin door. If we open it up, you can see all of our wiring and our lights, still running the old style lights, and a coin meter, and our test switch, which turns the game into test mode, and our coin bucket. We'll go more into this kind of piece here. You probably saw some of that when we did our little build montage. But so let's look at the side art real quick and look at the back. So here's the side art and the side laminate. Now this is laminate to make it look wood grain, which Atari would have used, but I think the Atari game's actually, it's almost like a vinyl sticker. It's not really a true laminate, but Atari sure loved their wood grain. So the side art on Cabaret is, you had to order it specialty. It didn't just come pre-installed with the game. Operators had to order it. And I designed this art specifically for the Cabaret, utilizing elements of both the side art from the upright and kind of some stuff, just kind of artistic license, using the Atari logo as kind of the jet stream for the starfighters there. This background spacing is actually from an old comic book from the 70s that Jack Kirby did, but I felt like it fit pretty well. It's just a lot like the artwork that Atari used for the game originally, and I'm real happy with the way it came out. It looks like, with the 3 stripes is very indicative of other Cabaret artwork that Atari would have used. So again, my effort here was to make it look as factory as possible, so this is kind of this is as much artistic license as I probably took with anything in the game, is making this side art, and I couldn't be happier with it. So let's take a look at the back, and you see this bit here, this back piece that has kind of a fake vent that lines up at the angle of the top. This is a pretty tricky piece to make, but I have my serial numbers and my patent information and my warning sticker that Atari would have originally had to warn people not to, I guess, open the game and lick their fingers or something. And then you have serial number, which has the model number that this would have been, 31002, which would have been the model number for the Liberator Cabaret that they were planning. And then I made the serial number 1, since I don't really know of any others. But I'm not trying to pass this off as a real thing, so I just made it 1. It's kind of fun. So let's open up and look inside the game here. So in our back door, we have our self-test paperwork, which Atari always puts in most games. Sometimes it gets eaten or destroyed. This is usually done on pretty inexpensive paper. I designed this just for this game, and it looks pretty close to probably what Atari would have done. I had to kind of guess, but I think I did pretty well. I modeled this after the one in the Battle Zone. So inside the game, it's pretty basic. You have this huge piece that you saw we made during the kind of the little montage of making the game. Probably one of the most complicated pieces in this game. It holds the audio regulator board, the coin bucket underneath the coin switches, and then the speaker box. And what that allows is kind of like a baffle, you would call it. Creates kind of a fake subwoofer, and it works really well in Battlezone, and it works really well in Liberator too, because it makes the explosions just sound huge out of this little speaker. I've got my manual here. This wiring harness I did not make. I made an attempt to make a wiring harness. I was getting frustrated, and there's a guy named Travis Reynolds who makes these custom, perfectly correct Atari wiring harnesses, and for other games too. You can find him on Etsy and on Facebook. We have our Liberator PCB. I actually have 2 of these. They're, again, very rare. They only made 762 of these. One is not working quite perfectly or at all right now, so I sent that one off to get repaired. Audio regulator board, pretty standard in Atari games. And then our power brick that we totally restored. And then we also have the on-off switch here and the safety lockout. And there's a little cover on the power switch. Is a pretty hard piece to find, and I got that from the arcade boneyard. And then I put the little correct decal on it. So that's pretty much it. And of course our little 13-inch monitor up above. So the gameplay is just as it should, even though it's on a little bit of a smaller monitor. It's a 13-inch monitor compared to 19 that was on the upright. And yeah, this board is kind of interesting because it utilizes kind of some leftover technology from Missile Command 2, which never came out. And then they have some 64K ROMs that just deal with that rotating planet, which is pretty well done actually for the era. It's really smooth, and as the levels increase, that will get up even further. And you know, it's been described as a reverse Missile Command, but I think that it's a little bit more than that. It's definitely, it takes the Missile Command ideas and kind of adds a good bit of flair to them. And the game is fun, but there's not a lot of strategy to it, I don't feel. It's just kind of blast it all. And one of the downsides of the game too is you have these 4 ships, and once you get to the point where you only have like 1 or 2 left, the firing slows down. So it becomes kind of boring, honestly, because eventually you're just going to get squashed unless you have at least 3 of those guys still alive. But the game works great. It's pretty vibrant. The colors are fun. And there you go. Not a game you see very often for sure. So there you go. There is the Liberator Cabaret. I'm pretty excited how it came out, especially since this is the first scratch-built game we've ever done. And I got a lot of questions. I posted pictures of this thing about 2 weeks ago on social media, and I had a lot of nice emails and instant messages or whatever come in, and people are like, oh, how'd you do this and this and this? How do I do something like this? And I think it's an important thing to think about the stacking of skills. And if you've been watching these videos for a while, like when we made our Marquee, we did the laminate. And then we did electronic things with rebuilding monitors, or like when we built our Arkanoid, we did it from scratch as far as the internals. And then when we did the Simpsons, we rebuilt a lot of the cabinet from there. Building the scratch cabinet doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but I think you have to be kind to yourself and realize you're going to mess up, and careful planning will help these situations. And also having a buddy, I do this with my wife. My wife is much better at the woodworking stuff than I am, and I'm much better at like the electronic side and kind of the design aspects, I guess, of the whole thing. So anywho, coming up, I've got 2 games I'm working on, and I'm hoping I'll get at least one of them done before school starts. And then I also have this big documentary I'm actually making about Liberator that's not quite finished yet, but almost. I'm just waiting on a few things, but that should be out by the end of this month, which is August of 2020, if you're watching this in the future or something. But there's a lot of stuff in there that hasn't been seen by anybody. I have over 250 pages of documents about the internal development of Liberator as a game, and why it's so obscure, and why it didn't really pay off for Atari. So there you go. Happy hunting, happy collecting, and be safe and sane out there. And I'll see you next time.
Gründlich durchgecheckt, steht sie da und wartet auf den Start. Alles klar, Experten streiten sich.